You have heard it your whole life. Your parents told you to buy. Your financially savvy friend on social media says rent and invest the difference. Your coworker swears he is building wealth through homeownership. And you are sitting there, wondering who actually has this figured out, because every conversation seems to lead somewhere different depending on who is doing the talking. Here is the problem. Almost nobody in this debate is running the complete numbers. The pro-buying side shows you what a house is worth 30 years from now and calls that the argument. The pro-renting side talks about flexibility and freedom without ever showing you what that flexibility costs at age 65. Neither side puts everything on the table. This video does exactly that. We are going to walk through two guys, same starting point, same city, same income, same savings. One buys, one rents. We are going to track their money through year 3, through year 6, through year 10, all the way to the finish line. And we are going to include the stuff that almost always gets left out. The mortgage interest that quietly eats your early payments. The closing costs that hit you before you even unpack a single box. The maintenance bills nobody budgets for honestly. The opportunity cost of a $60,000 down payment sitting in walls instead of markets. And the number that might genuinely shock renters. What that monthly rent looks like 30 years from now, after annual increases compound year after year. Before we get into it, if you want financial breakdowns that actually hold up in a spreadsheet rather than just sounding good in a headline, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. This channel does not do rosy versions. We do real numbers. Alright, two guys, Alex and David, both 32 years old, both earning around $60,000 a year, both living in the same mid-size American city. Both have $60,000 saved up. They want the same thing, a 3-bedroom place in a decent neighborhood with reasonable commute distance. David buys a $300,000 home. He puts his entire $60,000 down, hitting that 20% mark and skipping private mortgage insurance entirely. He takes out a 30-year fixed mortgage at 6.5%. His principal and interest payment lands at about $1,517 monthly. Stack on property taxes at roughly $250 a month and homeowners insurance at around $130 a month, and David is looking at approximately $1,900 going out every single month. And that figure still does not include maintenance. Alex rents a comparable place for $1,400 a month. He does not touch his $60,000. Instead, he drops the entire amount into a broad market index fund, averaging around 8% annually. His monthly housing cost is $500 less than David's. No property taxes, no maintenance surprises, no insurance beyond a cheap renter's policy. On paper, day one, Alex is winning, and it does not even look close. But here is the thing about day one. It is the worst possible moment to judge this decision. Because what happens from day one forward is where the real story lives. Before David even moves in, he is behind. Closing costs on a $300,000 home typically run somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000. Lender origination fees, title insurance, appraisal, prepaid taxes, escrow setup. Call it $9,000 in David's case. That is money that has to be recovered before buying starts making financial sense compared to renting. Nobody hands you a brochure about this at the open house. And here is what stings even more in those early months. David is paying around $1,500 a month toward his mortgage. But in year one, at a 6.5% interest rate, the overwhelming majority of that payment goes straight to the lender as interest. In his first year, roughly $15,000 of his mortgage payments vanish as interest charges. Only about $2,800 actually reduces what he owes. That interest disappears just as completely as rent does. It just does not get described that way. Alex, meanwhile, is paying $1,400 a month and watching his $60,000 investment grow quietly. By the end of year 3, that untouched investment has grown to approximately $75,600. He added nothing. Compounding did the work. David, over those same 3 years, has paid well over $100,000 in mortgage payments, closing costs, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance combined. His actual equity built through principal payments sits at roughly $9,500. That gap is real. Through year 3, Alex is winning by a significant margin. Now hit pause on those numbers for a moment, because something else is happening simultaneously that the monthly payment comparison almost always ignores. Alex's rent is not staying at $1,400. It goes up. His landlord raises it 4% at renewal, then 3.5% the year after, then 4% again. Each increase feels manageable in isolation. 56 more a month here, 60 there. It never triggers a crisis. It just quietly erodes his financial cushion year by year. David's mortgage payment, on the other hand, sits at that same $1,517 principal and interest figure on month 1, month 60, month 120, and month 360. 3 decades, same number. The fixed cost of a mortgage is one of those financial mechanics that sounds boring but ends up being enormously powerful over time. Inflation rises. Wages theoretically grow. Everything around David gets more expensive, and his core housing cost stays completely still. At a 3.5% annual rent increase, Alex's $1,400 monthly rent becomes roughly $1,870 by year 10. It climbs to around $2,500 by year 20, and by year 30, the same month David is making his final mortgage payment and transitioning into a housing cost of essentially nothing, Alex is writing a check north of $3,300 every single month, with no end date in sight. Now let us get to where the math genuinely shifts for the buyer, because it does not happen on day 1. It starts happening around year 5 or 6. David's home has been appreciating. Historically, American home values have grown at roughly 3 to 4% annually over long periods. At 3.5% appreciation, that $300,000 home is worth about $347,000 by the end of year 6. Meanwhile, his mortgage balance has dropped to around $269,000. That gives David roughly $78,000 in equity, net worth that simply did not exist 6 years ago. But here is what makes this even more significant. David did not put $78,000 into the house. He put $60,000 down. The rest came from appreciation on the full $300,000 asset. This is leverage, and it is the single most underrated advantage homeowners have in this debate. David is earning market gains on $300,000 worth of real estate while having personally invested $60,000. Alex earns returns only on what he actually put in. There is no multiplier. Alex's index fund has also grown by year 6, assuming he has not touched it, and that assumption matters a great deal. At 8% annual returns, his $60,000 has compounded to around $95,000. That is a genuinely solid gain. But his rent is now approaching $1,600 a month. He is getting closer and closer to what David pays in total housing costs. Except David's payment is steadily building ownership, and Alex's payment is buying him another month in someone else's property. The scoreboard is tightening. And from year 6 forward, the trend only moves in one direction. By year 10, David's home is worth approximately $420,000. His mortgage balance has dropped to around $250,000. He is sitting on roughly $170,000 in equity. His total money spent over that decade, everything including the down payment, closing costs, interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, is higher than Alex's. But what he has built underneath all that spending is a growing asset. Alex, over the same decade, spent around $190,000 in rent. His investment portfolio, if untouched and consistently invested, sits at approximately $129,000. When you actually net out spending against assets built, David is pulling ahead by somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. And the acceleration from here is not linear. It compounds. At year 30, David makes his final mortgage payment and owns a home outright that could be worth $700,000 or more. His monthly housing cost drops to property taxes, insurance, and basic maintenance, maybe $600 a month. Alex, at that same moment, is still paying a landlord over $3,300 monthly, with nothing accumulating underneath it. No payoff date, no finish line. Just an ongoing obligation that will continue until he stops renting. Now, before anyone walks away thinking this is just a pro-buying video, it is not. There are situations where the math genuinely, clearly favors renting. Not as a consolation prize, as the actually correct financial decision. If you are staying somewhere fewer than 5 years, buying almost always loses. Closing costs going in plus selling commissions going out, typically 5 to 6% of the sale price, combined with minimal equity built in the interest-heavy early years, means you will very likely come out behind renting. The honest break-even point for most home purchases is somewhere between 5 and 7 years. Not from the day you feel emotionally settled, from the day you buy. If you live in a market where home prices have become genuinely disconnected from rental costs, think certain parts of coastal California or Manhattan, the price-to-rent ratio can be so skewed that buying simply does not work mathematically. When a property costs over $1 million but rents for $3,500 a month, the numbers do not support buying even over long time horizons. If your career requires genuine geographic flexibility, or if you are someone who truly will invest the monthly difference with complete consistency, including during market crashes when everything in you screams to stop, renting can be a powerful wealth-building strategy. That last point deserves more honesty than it usually gets, though. Every analysis showing renting outperforming buying is built entirely on the assumption that the renter invests the difference. Every single dollar, every single month, without exception, for decades. The evidence on whether people actually do this is not encouraging. When money sits in a checking account, it tends to find its way toward lifestyle upgrades, a nicer apartment, a better car, more dining out. The budget difference gets absorbed, and once that happens, the entire mathematical case for renting collapses, because the investment returns that were supposed to offset the lack of equity building never materialized. Homeownership forces a form of savings discipline through the mortgage payment that no spreadsheet can fully capture. That forced mechanism is one of the primary reasons buying tends to build more wealth for average households than the theoretical models predict. Here is the honest summary. Buying wins when you are staying at least 7 years, when your local price-to-rent ratio makes the math work, when your rent is already close to total ownership costs, and when leverage can amplify gains in an appreciating market. Renting wins when you need flexibility within the next few years, when the price-to-rent ratio in your market is extremely high, when your career mobility has genuine economic value, and most critically, when you have the discipline to actually invest the cost difference every month without fail. The real trap in this entire debate is not renting, and it is not buying. The real trap is making a decision that will shape your financial life for decades, based on what the monthly number looks like right now, without ever asking what that decision costs you at year 10, year 20, or year 30. Ask yourself 2 questions honestly before you decide. How long are you actually planning to stay in one place? And if you choose to rent, will you genuinely invest the difference every single month, even when the market is down 40% and your instincts are screaming to wait? Your answers to those 2 questions will tell you more about which path is right for you than any general rule about homeownership ever will. The math is not complicated, but you have to run all of it. Not just the part that confirms what you already want to believe. Because the only version of this analysis that actually matters is the one that reflects what you will genuinely do over the next 30 years, not just what sounds good at the kitchen table tonight. If this breakdown gave you a more complete picture of what this decision actually looks like when you put everything on the table, Go ahead and hit like right now. It genuinely helps more people find this kind of honest financial content. Subscribe for more videos that skip the rosy version and run the real numbers. And drop a comment below telling me where you stand. Are you buying, renting, or somewhere in between? I read every single comment. See you in the next one.